Hi everybody, Playtendoguy here, and today I'm bringing you my Switch Hidden Gems video. The Switch is a brilliant console with a huge and varied list of amazing games, that if I list them all, I'd be here all day. Obviously, there's titles that easily come to mind when you think of the best games on Switch, like Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and Animal Crossing New Horizons. But there's a fairly hefty amount of titles that nobody really talk about. From eShop titles to retail releases that either got forgotten due to a heap of new releases that launched alongside them or didn't just find the audience they truly deserved. Today I'm going to bring you my list of some of the many hidden gems for Switch. Most of the titles are retail releases and are relatively cheap to pick up, so without further ado, let's begin. Starting off the list we have Iron Fury. Starting off with a fairly recently released title, Iron Fury is an absolute old school blast from the past with many modern touches to make it feel highly fresh. Taking control of Shelly Bombshell, you traverse many different varied and action-packed levels full of secrets, and it's really enjoyable just to explore these locales. Its story is sidelined, and rightly so, for the rock-solid and addictive gameplay that constantly keeps you on your toes. Visually, the Switch port looks great in both docked and handheld play, and whilst when you first start the game it may be locked at 30 FPS, you can unlock the frame rate so it can run up to 60 FPS by inputting the old Konami code. Iron Fury is an utter action-packed thrill ride from beginning to end and highly replayable due to the huge amount of secrets and how fun the game is. So if you're a fan of the old school Doom games, then look no further than Iron Fury for your old school shooting needs. Next up we have Team Sonic Racing. The Switch isn't short of kart races, and whilst there's no denying that Mario Kart is still the king of the kart races on Switch, there's also a place for Sonic, as Team Sonic Racing is a very fun but also a very underappreciated game. Coming from the same team behind the brilliant Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed, Team Sonic Racing is a very fast and enjoyable racing game. Yes, its biggest fault is the lack of the Sega All-Star characters and stages for a more focus on Sonic and his friends, but once you look past that you have a very fun and competent racer. The main new gameplay mechanic in the game is the team-based racing, where you and two other racers have to work together to gain the most points to win, as coming in first doesn't always guarantee you a win. When in multiplayer, this mechanic really does shine, and it kind of reminds me of something that could work for esports. The game does actually have a decent amount of content for single players, as there's a fully fledged adventure mode with its own daft story, giving you plenty of races and challenges for you to try and complete, and some later levels do actually provide quite a hefty challenge. Whilst I do think when this released late last year, there was a focus on what it wasn't, but if you look past that and look at its own merits, this is a highly recommended racer that stands up with Crash Team Racing as a great Mario Kart alternative. Next, we have Aragami. Stealth games are very fun, but alas, with the lack of any new Metal Gear Solid or Splinter Cell on Switch, Aragami provides a great alternative. Not to be confused with origami, the Japanese art of paper folding, Aragami is a fun game about a shadow spirit ninja who has to find this young girl who's been kidnapped. The tale is decent enough, but the gameplay is where it's all at. Feeling a bit like Arcane Studios' utterly brilliant Dishonored series, Aragami has a multitude of special abilities that allows you to sneak in the shadows and pick off your enemies one by one. You can choose to spare enemies, but staying hidden is the ultimate aim here, as if you get caught, you'll soon be defeated. The game may take a little while to get going, but as you are only stuck with a few abilities when you first start, a couple levels into the game it really does pick up. Also, the frame rate is a little bit dodgy, but don't let that put you off this really fun stealth game that is rather lengthy with all the DLC and is also pretty cheap to boot these days. Next up we have Red Faction Guerrilla Remastered. The Red Faction series has been going around for some time now, and whilst the series has faded in recent years, this is a fun remaster of Guerrilla and is a very memorable time. Originally released on the PS4 and the Xbox One all the way back in 2018, the Switch received a version last summer, and it was one of the games I most enjoyed playing over the last summer period. It's mainly due to the fantastic action gameplay. The missions are very fun, which sees you go from A to B shooting and blowing stuff up. It's incredibly enjoyable, and it's mainly due to the fact that there's so much great destructive detail here. Watching a building crumble is incredibly satisfying. The Destruction Master side missions are definitely the best levels to play, as it tasks you to take down a building with a certain weapon in a certain time limit. It's a blast. Whilst the story isn't nothing to write home about, there's a very enjoyable and lengthy game here that includes all the previous DLC and some very fun multiplayer modes that are playable in both online and local. Red Faction Guerrilla is just pure dumb, over the top action fun that's still a blast after all these years, and also that remastered title. It deserves recognition just for that alone. Next up is Sniper Elite 3 Ultimate Edition. Rebellion has quietly been bringing their Sniper Elite games over to Switch, and it started with the rather enjoyable but a little bit dated V2, but with Sniper Elite 3 on Switch we're seeing one of the best and fully featured ports on the console. Originally releasing in 2014, and it was a rather early game in this generation, but it still provides a fantastic game for Switch owners, especially if you're after some shooting action. The Sniper Elite games are essentially stealth games. Whilst you can go in all guns blazing, you'll quickly end up dead. The main aim of the game is to hide in the shadows and take out as many Nazis as quietly as possible. The way Rebellion handles aiming the sniper is superb, and when you pull off a headshot it's incredibly satisfying. And yes, the iconic and rather gruesome X-ray kills are all here in their bloody glory, and they look great. If the X-ray kills aren't your cup of tea, you can actually turn them off if you wish. Sniper Elite 3 really does tower over the previous game with some brilliantly designed levels that are huge open areas filled to the brim with plenty of sniping potential. There's a lot of content here, including all the full base game with all the DLC, characters, weapons and multiplayer modes. This is a fully fledged port without any cutbacks whatsoever. Everything is all on the cartridge to make for one of the best and most underappreciated ports on the Switch. Next up we have new Super Lucky's Tale. The 3D platformer has seen a bit of a resurgence in the past few years, with the truly excellent Mario Odyssey and the Crash and Spyro remakes, but one game that is just as good as those titles, but never really gets any mention, is New Super Lucky's Tale. Originally starting life as an Xbox One X launch title, Super Lucky's Tale kinda felt a bit misplaced on Microsoft's console, but with this Switch re-release this game has been improved, providing a much better experience. With this updated version the game improves a lot on the faults of the original, mainly getting rid of the awkward fixed camera angles for a much better revamped camera system that is pretty much perfect. There's also some new levels here, as well as some existing levels being spruced up a bit. Playing Lucky's Tale is a real joy, and all throughout my playthrough I had a big smile on my face. I mean, just look at the guy, he's just so darn adorable. Going through the game's many levels, you're treated to some well designed levels filled to the brim with collectibles to nab, enemies to attack, and platforms to traverse. The only real fault I have with the game is that it's a bit on the short side, taking you around 8 to 10 hours, but don't let that put you off New Super Lucky's Tale, as it's a wonderful and cheerful title that really does put a smile on your face and delivers an enjoyable platformer that is perfect for young kids and young at heart. And with the way the world is, I think we could all do with a bit of lucky in our lives. Continuing on, we have Ukulele and the Impossible Lair. One of the most successful Kickstarters of all time was Ukulele, and it was sold as a spiritual successor to the beloved Nintendo 64 platformer Banjo-Kazooie. And whilst the final game was a bit of a disappointment, last year and out of the blue popped up The Impossible Lair, a 2D spin-off that is a huge improvement over the original. By changing the perspective from 3D to 2D, we see developers Playtonic captured the essence of Donkey Kong Country franchise. The game features a huge bundle of levels that are all fantastically designed and bursting full of creativity. There's also a great amount of collectibles to nab too. The chameleon and bat duo control like a dream, feeling rather similar to a certain ape, but they also have a few interesting tricks up their own sleeves. The titular Impossible Lair is incredibly hard, providing a fiendish challenge, and you'll certainly die a lot of times, but with a recent update the lair is a little less impossible, so it can help players out. It isn't just the brilliantly designed levels, as in between levels you can explore a wonderful Zelda-like overworld full of secrets and puzzles to solve. It's a truly clever and interactive way of what is normally a boring and empty section of 2D platforming games where you choose your next level. This all boils down to easily one of the best Switch ports I've ever seen, running at a silky smooth 60 FPS all the time to make Impossible Lair easily one of the best 2D platformers on the Switch, and does rival some of Nintendo's own efforts. A truly excellent experience that you must try, especially if you like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. Next up, we have Sushi Striker: The Way of Sushido. One of the greatest things about Nintendo is that they always tend to do very fun and enjoyable games with odd and out there premises, and Sushi Striker: The Way of Sushido is certainly one of them. Originally announced as a 3DS game, this also launched on the Switch, and the whole premise of the game is delightfully daft, as it's set in a world where sushi is banned and you play as a young kid who hopes to stop an evil emperor to bring sushi back to the masses. Again, its plot is certainly out there, but the tale and the script is wonderfully written, and the anime cutscenes bring a lot of charm to it. The main aim of the game is sushi battles, and these puzzle sections where loads of plates with sushi are going by on a conveyor belt, and you have to match up the same colour plates together to have a pile of plates to fling at your opponent. It's a very interesting premise that is expanded upon with various abilities and Pokemon like sushi spirits. The sushi battles are very enjoyable, and a simple idea that works so well that it can be very addictive. The story mode is lengthy too, taking you upwards of 15 hours to complete the mainline story. Once you finish, there's challenge mode to go through and online multiplayer if you can find a match. The game would have probably proved more successful if it was an eShop only title, but as it is, you can pick up the game for under $10 on many gaming websites, so there's no excuse not to pick up this wonderfully unique and highly entertaining puzzler. Next up, we have Starlink Battle for Atlas. The Toys to Life genre was at one time very big business, with the Skylanders kicking off the trend in 2011. Later on, Disney, Lego and even Nintendo joined the market, but ultimately by the late 2010s the fad had died out, only with Nintendo's Amiibo remaining. But releasing in 2018 and coming very late to the party was Starlink Battle for Atlas. This Toys to Life game sees you building your own starship with its own pilots and editing the ship with new weapons. The ships were actually quite well made, and they were fun to swap the wings and weapons about and see how the ship changed appearance in game. Onto the actual game now, and you place your ship on your controller with a special mount, and you control your ship through the many open world planets, shooting down enemies, exploring the many species and completing loads of missions. The game did feel like what No Man's Sky should have been at launch, and whilst the game does suffer from the typical Ubisoft syndrome of being very repetitive and bloated full of open world activities, it's still a very enjoyable game. But one thing that elevates the Switch version over the other consoles is the inclusion of Star Fox content. Yes, Nintendo's beloved series had a special crossover with this game. With the physical edition, you get your very own R-Wing model and a small Fox pilot figure, so you can play the entire game as Mr. Fox McCloud instead of some rather bland and forgettable cast members. Also, there's a bunch of Star Fox missions, and there's even extra Star Fox Story DLC that allows you to play as Slippy, Falco and Peppy. The game completely tanked at retail, and again, like Sushi Striker, you can pick this game up relatively cheaply. Just make sure you have enough storage to play, as you need about 8 or 9 gigabytes to fully play the game. Yes, it may have put many folks off being Toys to Life, but this is an incredibly enjoyable title, and maybe the closest thing we'll get to a proper Star Fox game on Switch. Continuing on, we have Daemon X Machina. Of all the games on the list, this is probably the one that had the most publicity, mainly thanks to being published by Nintendo. This title even opened up Nintendo's 2018 E3 presentation, but that did little to gain the title much success. Anyway, onto the actual game now, and Daemon X Machina is, as you probably guess, a mech game where you controlling these hulking great mechs through various different levels, defeating many different enemies and the like. From the get-go, the game actually reminds me of the Monster Hunter series, with its setup for gear and choosing missions. There's a lot of loot and various weapon types for you to find, and tinkering with your mech becomes rather addicting. The missions you partake in are pretty fun, mainly due to the enjoyable combat. Your mech can pack a lot of heat, carrying up to 6 weapons. Shooting is well handled, and there's a generous aim assist here if you need help. The melee weapons also feel crunchy, and it's great to pull off. The missions can be very repetitive, as they mostly all boil down to shoot this and shoot that, and there is a story here, but it's highly forgettable. There is online and local multiplayer, so you can play with some mates or strangers to play missions, and it's really great to play with other folks. If you're a bit unsure, there is a rather lengthy demo to play to help you make up your mind, but if you do pick it up, you could do far worse than this lovely looking mech game. Next up is Yokos Island Express. I have an admission to make. When I first noticed this game on store shelves, I actually thought it was Yoshi's Island Express, but when searching online, I was surprised to find out what the game actually is. Yokos Island Express is a Metroidvania pinball game. Yes, as weird as it sounds though, the game totally works. You play as a little beetle called Yoku who has to travel around his island delivering posts for its inhabitants, as well as trying to stop the island from being destroyed. Little Yoku is attached to a ball and you roll the ball around the levels, but there's plenty of pinball flippers that allow you to reach higher platforms and hidden areas. There's also sections of the game that feels like one giant pinball table and serves some very clever puzzles. There's also a load of bosses in the game, and they're also plenty of fun too. The island is fairly decently sized. Though it may not look huge, there's plenty of secrets to find and many varied places to explore. Yoku gains a small amount of new abilities throughout the game, which allows you to discover new parts of the map. The only issue I had with the game is that it can be quite easy to get lost, but thankfully there's a fast travel points dotted all around the map. Yoku's Island Express is easily one of the finest and most unique experiences on the Switch, and a mighty fine enjoyable take on the Metroidvania genre. Next up is Katamari Damacy Reroll. Now time for something completely different. Easily one of the most strangest games on the Switch is Katamari Reroll. Originally released on the PS2 all the way back in 2004, it provided a big hit in both Japan and the West. But with Reroll, the game gets a remake for Switch that spruces up the graphics, cutscenes, and introduces new Joy-Con motion controls that make for a fantastic package. Playing as a little green guy who is called the Prince, and he's been sent to Earth by his dad, the King of Cosmos, to fill the skies with stars. You do this by rolling a ball around the map and collecting anything and everything up. It's an utterly bizarre and dark premise that works perfectly. Going through the game's many levels that are very well created, grabbing all these different items is really fun. It's a puzzle platformer done right. As you go through the levels, you have to build up your ball big enough so other stuff can stick to it. You start off invading a small living room, picking up anything you find on the floor, to rolling up buildings and people. It's a very funny game and such an enjoyable one that all the time I played, I had a big smile on my face. Also, the soundtrack is top notch. The game is available digitally in the UK and it's pretty cheap. I think it's only about 15 quid, but I did find an import copy on eBay for about 20 quid. So if you want a physical copy, try having a look online if you live in the UK, but I think the rest of the world has actually got physical releases. Next up is Avicii Invector. I've never really been a big fan of modern day music, so I didn't really know a lot about the late Avicii, only a few of his songs, but I did remember when the news broke out that he took his own life. It was incredibly sad news. During his short life, he was actually working on a game with a small team, and Avicii Invector is that game. Created in part with his family, Invector is a true celebration of all the work this talented young man achieved in his life. The game is a very addictive rhythm game action title that sees you playing through a set list of either 25 or 35 songs depending on which version you go for. You play as a spaceship, tapping buttons to the time of the music. It reminds me very much of Harmonix Frequency. The game also looks absolutely wonderful with a beautiful space art style and some great lighting. It's a truly eye-catching experience. And for under £25 you're getting a lot of game for your money. And a part of the game's asking price will go to the Tim Bergling Foundation to help with suicide awareness. Avicii Invector is a very fun and addictive game that's easily one of the finest rhythm games on the Switch, and a fine tribute to a very talented young man. And the final game on my list is FateX Link. I was never really into the Muso games. That was until I tried the brilliant Hyrule Warriors and enjoyed it immensely that I bought it on 3 different consoles. So I picked this title up a while ago when I found it discounted. FateX Link is a direct sequel to the Umbral Star, which I never played. I went into this game going blind, not knowing too much about it apart from being a Muso game. And boy is it a heck of a lot of fun. Combat is fast paced and the many different characters on offer have loads of moves at their disposal, so you can mix it up quite a bit in combat. If you're not keen on the repetitive nature of the game, it's probably not going to win you over, but if you enjoy these type of games, there's hordes to do with a decent length story mode and a bucket load of side missions to keep you coming back. There is a story here, but frankly I haven't got a clue what is going on, but I guess fans of the series will enjoy it. But I'm here for the gameplay, and throughout my time with the game I really enjoyed it, and it's a highly recommended for folks who got into this genre thanks to Hyrule Warriors and want more to play. And with that, the list is over. What did you think? I tried to find a mix of all genres to make for a varied list. I know I missed a load of other brilliant Switch titles that didn't get much love either, so if you've got a hidden gem for the Switch that you want to recommend, tell me in the comment section below. As always, thank you for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you could be so kind to like the video and subscribe, that would be brilliant. Until next time, stay safe and have fun. Bye.